like to bring the regular council meeting of January 12th, 2021 to order. So welcome to all of you online, in that online world. We apologize that we have to use that world, but it's what we have to do until we hear otherwise from the health authorities. To everyone, I wish you Happy New Year. It's our first meeting of the new year. First order of business is I'd like to welcome Linda Brick, our Deputy Corporate Officer. She's from North Vancouver and has regional district and city experience, and we welcome her to Merit. And I understand she's gotten right in and jumped right in and is quite active with the team. So welcome. I guess I should have pushed your button. That's one of the things I want to talk to. As you can see, we've changed the seating for this next little while. And I'd like to ask each of us that are using the microphone to please wait to speak. I promise I'll turn it on before you get a chance to speak. You need to acknowledge that that mic is turned on. Those people in the online world can't hear you if your mic isn't on. So it's really important that we wait and get the whole few words of startup before we jump right in. Finally, I'd like debate to take a little bit different approach this year. I'm asking that we stick to speaking to 2 different times during the debate. So instead of the choppy little let's go around and round 15 times, which I think we've done in the past, I'd like to say let's try it to 2. Now I know I'm not going to be rigid on the first little bit because it's going to take time for us to get used to being able to speak once and then just having a second go at it rather than 2 or 3 times, because some of us say the same thing over and over and over again. So we'll try doing it that way. Hopefully that'll work. First item for us, there's no public input because of the session. Did you have something to say, Mr. Lois?
No, Your Worship, just to confirm that we did advertise for anyone who wished to send any written submissions into Council in place of the ordinary spoken session at the start of these meetings, and there was no input received from the public.
Okay, thank you. I didn't realize, I know you told me that, but I hadn't thought of it. So every time we have online, I'll still ask for that public input so that those who do want to ask a question can do so. Are you asking them to do that ahead of time?
Your Worship, the instructions which I gave the media during our regular agenda briefing were that if anybody submitted any written materials up until 7 o'clock, so the start of the meeting time, then I would make sure they were put in front of you either when they were received or at the start of the meeting if they came in right before. Okay. So that's the way we're currently running things.
Thank you.
May I ask
Councillor Luck.
Mayor, may I ask a question in regards to that?
Yes.
So the protocol we're using is because of COVID and everything. Are we pretty much performing the way, our process pretty much the way as many other cities are doing as well? So it doesn't seem like our public is feeling like we're doing something different than everybody. We're pretty much having the same kind of protocol and process in place, Mr. Glowis?
Yes, Councillor Luck, through the mayor to you. I started trying to do some research into what other municipalities are doing as standard, and certainly there's pretty much the entire gamut, as you might expect. Yeah. So, for example, on public hearings, there are some municipalities who, if you have an official community plan in place and an application is consistent with that, you're allowed to not hold a hearing at all, and several municipalities are taking advantage of that. Wow. We have not taken that step in Merit because we want to try to make sure we still get as many public views as possible. So there are some municipalities who are having to cut down on public input because it's just so difficult to get in at the moment. Mm-hmm. There are definitely others who are managing to get in more, such as having people dial in live to their meetings. Mm-hmm. But the type of web streaming that we use in Merit makes that very difficult when we have these hybrid style of meetings. So we think at the moment we're pretty much mid-range. We're doing our best to invite as much public input as we can.
Excellent, yeah. Thank you for that, just so the public is aware that we're not doing anything out of the extraordinary or anything like that. We're trying to follow the same protocols everybody else is, so that's good. Thanks very much for that update.
Following the same protocol would be different because we all have different platforms that we're working on and the different rules, but yeah. So adoption of the minutes, regular council meeting held on December 15th, 2020 to be adopted. I need a mover and a seconder. And any errors or omissions? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. There are no delegations or presentations. There is no unfinished business. We do have bylaws. At 7.1, the adoption of bylaw 2301-2020. I need a mover and a seconder. Anyone want to speak to this? Seeing none, I'll ask the question. All in favor? Opposed? Ms. White, is that opposed or? No. Okay. I'll slow it down a little bit. Okay. That was unanimous. Carried. On to new business and the business of snow removal. And we have Mr. Henderson with us. Welcome, and you're up to present.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. Sean and I went through kind of a PowerPoint, so we'll present that. The presentation overview, Council has requested information regarding the city's existing snow clearing program and potential changes that could be made to improve service for residents. Potential options to improve service, amendment of the city's snow clearing policy to increase clarity and transparency regarding the city's program, driveway and sidewalk clearing for seniors and the disabled, and pushing snow to the middle of the road with follow-up snow removal for priority 1 only streets as well as all streets. Presentation overview, potential improvements, driveway windrow clearing, enhanced sidewalk maintenance, clearing of downtown parking areas, the removal of snow from back alleys, the addition of an in-house night shift, increased service during large storms that are over 20 centimeters. At the conclusion of the presentation, Council will have the opportunity to request that any of the above options or other suggestions by Council be considered a part of the 2021 budget. More detailed information on any selected options will be provided during the budget process. Here we have a, sorry.
One thing to jump in, and I'll probably do that periodically throughout this meeting as Charlie Gord and I were tag teaming and putting this together. But one thing we really do want Council to know is the way we've set this up is largely the things that we have heard from the public. These are the types of complaints, the types of requests for service that we've heard. If Council's heard of other things, please do feel free to share that with us. And if that's something that you want us to explore as part of the upcoming budget process, we can make that happen. The other thing that we wanted to make sure that Council is aware of is that while the numbers that we have in here have been field tested through discussions with contractors at times, we've tested things in-house in order to get to the level that is going to be acceptable for budget. We still have some room to go. So this will give you a good idea of costs, but don't take it as the gospel truth on these exact costs in order to implement any of these services. The other thing that you'll notice is because we sort of set them out as an a la carte, would you like this service, would you like that service? Because some of them, will require at times additional personnel or additional equipment. There could be additional cost savings by combining one or more of those options, and that's also something that we'll explore with you should you have interest in multiple of them. So wanted to give that heads up as Charlie kind of dives in.
Yeah, there's going to be multiple items and options that we're going to propose and inform you guys with. This next slide is just in regards to the improvements since 2017. During the 2017 season, the snow removal budget was at $72,000, and with council support, we have increased that to just over $106,000. We did have the construction of a sand and salt storage facility in the Public Works yard, to which we can hold up to 55 cubic meters of sand and just over 35 cubic meters of salt, which makes our turnaround time much more efficient. We don't have to travel to the Godey pit, wait in line with other contractors. Puts us back on the road on a much faster time. We purchased a salt brine maker, so we produce our own brine at approximately half the cost as we used to purchase it from the local contractor. We purchased a new brine application unit, which is all computerized. We can tell the computer how much volume to put out per kilometer. So we roughly put out 150 liters per lane kilometer when we're utilizing this unit.
So Charlie, are they two different units?
They are. One makes the brine, one puts the brine on the road.
Okay, thank you.
We did the conversion of the water truck, which was a 2004 truck that was only utilized by the fire department. We converted that to a hook truck. What that hook truck does is it backs up to the brine application unit, it hooks it onto the flat deck, and from that point, we can apply the brine. When we did the conversion, we also added a plow underbody to that unit. So it's a very multi-use truck at this point. The purchase of a new loader that was completed last year, and one of the attachments was a plow blade attachment. We converted what was called the Aquaside weed killer. This was a simple trailer that had a unit that nobody had been utilizing for years. However, we underwent this project under just regular budgets this year and converted it to a secondary brine application unit. It's a smaller unit, but you'll see more curb applications with it. It's also kind of a plan B in case that we have any issues with our sole brine application unit. We do have a secondary unit, and we can apply it to other roads as well. We added a GPS units to all of our equipment. This allows for myself and supervision to track and react and deploy more efficiently from a laptop, from my office, from sometimes my bedroom office as well. It's really great to see little streets that have been missed where we don't have to get on the radio and ask, do you remember being there? And in major snowfall events, it's hard for the operators to remember every single street, every single corner that they've done. The GPS units are wonderful to have in our equipment. And from that point in 2017, right up to this year, we revamped our deployment strategies, our operator winter awareness training, and all operators, and I brought a copy, every unit has what all of our maps, all of our checklists, all of our priorities, so they can easily reference what is the brine unit route, what are the sidewalks that need to be hand shoveled, where are the traffic islands that I have to report to. So it's easier for the operators, and it just makes us a little bit more efficient. So the snow removal policy and procedure. The city's snow removal procedure was originally adopted by council in 2001, and it saw amendments in 2009 and 2010. The existing program and budgets have been implemented with the goal of meeting or exceeding the service levels set out in this document. However, there are some issues. It confuses the role of policy and procedure. Policy is typically established by council and publicly available. Procedures are typically established by administration and supports only internal processes. This is definitely a policy document, though it is billed as and at times been treated like a procedure.
I just wanted to provide a little bit of supplementary information to that with council. It was brought in by council resolution, which is indicative of policy, but it looks like in 2009 it was amended by administration, which is again, indicative of procedure. It's called a procedure, and much of what we have in there is meant to be public-facing, but typically procedures aren't. And so it's just, that's one of the kind of most glaring things with it, is that you realize it's a document that isn't sure what it is, and it absolutely should be a public-facing document, very clearly setting out what the service levels are, what the priorities are, and in order to meet public's expectations, I think that the underpinnings of those expectations are really established in this snow removal policy. So you can go on with the other issues, but just take our word for it. It's got problems, and we really need to revise it.
And the document hasn't been available as it should be. It contains requirements that, if required, should be in a bylaw for enforceability. Dated road length information, priorities need to be reviewed, as well as the added secondary priorities, and not to mention newly added service like pre-treating. Our procedure in-house lists secondary priorities, collector roads, these types of items that aren't readily available to the public, which should be. And for staff recommendations, that council directs staff to revise the snow removal policy and procedure, and the only cost will be staff time, and this will improve transparency and allow for better communication.
Can I ask another question about accessibility? Do we have anything regarding snow in our snow plowing, snow removal, snow whatever, in our accessibility age-friendly plan?
We do have some recommendations. Is that something that council would like to see formally brought forward, so you can see which ones specifically do relate to snow? For example, one of them is the establishment of a snow angels program is one of the first things that's up for snow. But there are a number of recommendations that we can bring forward for council's information.
Yes, and I would like that to happen, but also as part of this whole policy, the out-facing, yes. Please, thank you.
Sure.
So another thing that council is aware of on the topic of snow angels is that there have been lots of comments, probably both to council and to staff, that one of the main things is we need some better supports for seniors and the disabled when it comes to sidewalk and driveway clearing. We're aware of this. That's why we attempted to launch that Snow Angel program last year, but we've talked about it, I think, numerous times as to where that program went wrong. Ultimately, we feel that it was probably too much of a burden for people to sign up for a single commitment with one individual. That was a lot of the feedback that we had. And we also think that kind of the lengthy criminal record check process probably did serve as a deterrent. So we're looking at revamping the model. Council has heard that United Way, through this Better at Home program, is setting up in Merritt. In fact, their coordinator starts tomorrow, and we've had discussions with United Way about this. But we are wanting to work collectively with United Way, as well as other community organizations. We've had excellent conversations with the Merritt Centennials about how we can potentially utilize their support for a service like this. As well, in 2020, the city did receive $50,000. You might remember through the forestry community grant funding. This was all there to basically provide community support. So some of that money had been earmarked by council for various initiatives, ranging from food bank to this one here, 10,000 of it, which was set aside for age-friendly initiatives. And so what staff proposes to do is to continue our path of working with community organizations to shift this model where there might actually be some support directly provided to those organizations, some financial support through the grant funding. The coordination could potentially be done through the Better at Home program, but we would like to scale this up so that we can have more direct support and try and be able to meet the needs of our residents. Instead of relying on the one-off volunteers, we would reach out to kind of broader organizations to assist and fill that need. So this is something that we've, even in advance of this, have been working towards, and we're hopeful that once the coordinator is up and running here, we will be able to see the program in action this year. hopefully the sooner the better, but we only have so many months left. But looking forward to changing the model to provide better supports moving forward, and then hopefully keeping that momentum so that we're not always starting in the middle of the snow year trying to flounder and find a great option for providing these supports, so that seniors can know at the outset that they're going to have the service that they need.
So I understand that Better at Homes program is meant for our seniors here in town. It's a grant that initially was applied for 3 months of this year. Their fiscal year ends March 31st, I think. So they only had funding for January, February, March. They didn't hire their executive director for the Merritt area until, I think now. I don't even know if they've started yet. But we know that they're going to put the snow program as their top priority as they start, because they recognize that the seniors are having difficulty with, and we recognize that the seniors are having difficulty with the snow at this point in time. So it's been a little slower off the mark than what we expected, but we're still happy to see it here.
I should say that it's Linda who is largely coordinating and doing a lot of that work, so we threw her into the fire right off the bat, and she's getting to know lots of our excellent community organizations that way, and so wants to thank Linda for the work that she's doing on that.
And the snow program, just so we're all aware and we understand that there are at least 40 applicants that we had last year for the Snow Angels program. Those names and numbers will be turned over to that program, and I think Linda's involved in that part to it as well. So they won't be forgotten.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. So we'll move on to option number 3, pushing snow to the middle of the road with snow removal. This option would deploy after a 15 centimeter snowfall. We'll quickly go over what the equipment requirements to complete this program would. We already have one in-house grader. We already have one loader with front plow. We would need to purchase a additional loader with a snow blower attachment. We would also need to purchase 3 front plows for our plow trucks, which articulate to achieve plowing to the center of the road. We would also utilize our pickup truck plow with an attachment. That was also an addition in the 2017. I think I might have jumped over that one, but capital cost to achieve this would be the new loader at $230,000. The snowblower attachments do vary. They started at around $100,000 and they creep up to around $160,000. Just wider arms, they can push more cubic meters. So there's a different variety of snowblowers that you can purchase, as well as 3 front plows for our current plow trucks. That cost is $100,000. So your capital costs there are just south of $500,000 at $490,000. Operationally, we would need to promote some of our seasonal staff, and on a lot of these slides, you'll notice that we are looking to promote the seasonal staff rather than hire new full-time staff. It's more cost-effective this way, and we're promoting our staff from within and keeping them year-round. So in this case, 3 additional employees would be promoted from seasonal. Each seasonal runs around $40,000 for that promotion, so you're looking at $120,000 just over. Productivity of snow removal. So we currently have 70 kilometers worth of roads. The productivity would be roughly 14 kilometers per day. So if we did plowing to the center for all roads, we're looking at approximately 5 days to complete that program with loadout. Priority roads only equals to 29 kilometers, and that would be 2 days to complete. Subcontractor trucking. This is needed. This is an addition to the program. $73,000 per year if we were deploying these trucks 5 times per year. Bullets got a little confused here. 4 dump trucks are required. We're looking at 91 or just shy of $92 per hour for 8 hours. So for per shift, we're looking at $2,935, and we'd be looking at $14,675 to complete all the roads. So if we deployed this 5 times, that's where this 73,000 comes in. I think our bullets just got a little mixed up there. So staff recommendations for this is to not implement for the typical snow season experience in merit. The benefit of this option is likely outweighed by the cost. Added capital equipment would not be utilized outside of the winter. So the snowblower attachments would sit in the yard. They're not a multi-use item, unfortunately. The front plows as well, they would be parked as our underbodies are taken off our plow trucks and parked. But there's other options that you'll see in future slides here.
Can we go back up to this other one then first?
Oh, yeah.
Are you saying to us that your position would be you want us to subcontract as needed rather than look at a full program internally?
For plowing to the middle? So
Yes.
this is both. This would be almost a dual partnership of some subcontractors and in-house.
Okay.
When we are, I'll give you the example of why. As the city would have to adopt the strategy to plow to the center of the road. So during, say, the day shift, we would adopt this new strategy to put all the snow to the middle. From that point, our municipal trucks cannot handle the volume that the snowblower would push to them. Therefore, we would need to sub out bigger, larger trucks to hold the capacity and volume of the snow that's coming out of the snowblower. We may be assist, but we use municipal equipment, which is mostly smaller than the industrial size equipment. When we are trucking this snow out of all areas, we need that industrial size truck boxes.
So you're talking about both costs?
Yes, it is a real dual partnership because we have to adopt the strategy and then we also have to load it out as well. Now this is where operationally the numbers are vague because we would probably have to do the load out either under double time or if QP would entertain amending some shift schedules. So there's a lot of options, as I said, as echoing what Mr. Smith said, they're a bit round numbers because strategically you need to possibly load out on overtime.
Okay. Any questions at this point for Mr. Henderson? Councillor Christopherson.
The old policy said snow removal by hauling of the snow shall be done only in the downtown area on a regular basis. If the snow removal was only done in the downtown core, that would impact a lot of the costs, especially if it was contracted out at perhaps for the snow blowers, the really expensive item up there.
Sure, and when we do the snow removal in the downtown core, we do utilize subcontractors for the trucking as well as for a couple pieces of equipment as well. And that's where we come with the 70 kilometers of road. This is a real big addition to our program.
And one thing, just so council knows, as we go through these options, I think a lot of these ones that you're kind of considering will end up being discussed. We have one item where we talk about clearing of the parking areas downtown, and so we will talk about options in greater detail, but anything that we miss, we would love to come back to or hit independently. But I think a lot of these probably will hit at a later point.
And are we also talking about the bus stations or whatever they're called, bus seating areas and the fire hydrants? Those were other complaints that we heard.
Okay, yeah, we can definitely touch base with those.
Okay, Councillor White.
How many employees are there for snow removal?
So we have 14.5 unionized staff that work down at Public Works. When we come into very high snowfall, we'll deploy 11.5. So we have other departments that need to be maintained. The compost facility is a major one, the wastewater treatment plant, as well as the shop. As we up to 15 centimeters of snow, you'll see 9 pieces of equipment and 9 operators. As well as we ramp up, we start shutting down certain departments. The first one to be shut down is the compost facility. We pull that equipment operator out, and then from the wastewater treatment plant, we'll start to pull employees out of there.
So there aren't enough employees to have 2 shifts, like a day shift?
No, so if we...
When the ones you'll see coming
Yeah,
up.
we'll talk about these, but we need to have an addition of a night shift, not a removal of day employees, turn them into nights.
Okay,
But that is a great question. We'll definitely explain that a little bit better in the coming slides.
okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So option number 4, driveway windrow clearing. So in-house capital costs would be the purchase of 2 quads or ATVs with plows. That would be a $30,000 cost. Alternatively, we would look into some multi-use equipment, like skid steers that we could apply to the roads, the utilities, the parks department. The valuation is quite high on those pieces of equipment. 2 skid steers, we're looking at around $420,000 for that. So unfortunately, we wouldn't be able to make the quads as multi-use, but we could. There is items that we may be to incorporate quads with our ball field maintenance or items like that. We'd have to get a little creative with it, but these are the options that we have so far. Operational costs. Once again, the promotion of 2 seasonal staff to full-time, and the removal of 2 seasonal staff. So we would just promote them to full-time so that they're in our roster for the year.
And that's an additional amount over and above the current budget.
Yeah, so it's basically adding the 5 months that they have layoff onto the salary.
And one thing that we should say is when you see the $80,000, not all of that would hit the snow removal budget because there's other things that are done. In fact, a lot of it is going to be normal public works activities instead of just snow removal. It's only when the snow is coming that it gets allocated to that budget. But a certain portion of that $80,000 would be allocated to snow removal.
And those rounded dollars, are they inclusive of benefits, or is that just salary? Salary and benefits? Okay.
Correct. Yeah.
Thank you.
So mathematic-wise, if we were looking to deploy these 2 quads with 2 staff members and base it as its own program, at clearing each driveway at 2 minutes per driveway, 2 staff members working 12 hours, and that would include 4 hours of overtime, and to clear 1,500 driveways, we're looking at 2.1 days. With an 8-hour shift with no overtime, that would take 3.2 days. So that would be just an additional program where these 2 employees would focus on. Versus our subcontractor cost, 2 skid steers for 4.5 days at 8 hours, we're looking at $6,807 per deployment, essentially, per snowfall. So staff recommendations is council's discretion. 2 additional staff would improve service in this area, but staff is concerned that clearing times wouldn't meet public expectations, which would only generate further requests for service.
That and the secondary issue is that the graders go by a lot more often than, so we do somebody once, but you're going to have the grader go by 3-4 times and potentially create a little bit more windrows. So it would definitely add to service, and compared to what you saw in the previous slide, the costs are lesser, but we don't want to minimize the cost here. So council's going to have a tough decision weighing the importance to the community and what you've heard against that. And I think that once you consider a lot of the options holistically, some of these might be able to be combined with others in order to bring costs down, and this might be one of those.
And then we might need to look at what the strategic deployment looks like. If it is a snowfall of over 20 centimeters, are these two seasonal employees utilized in other higher priority areas, sidewalks, letdowns, bridge clearing, that type of stuff, and then deployed? And where do they fall on the priority level? So just items to consider there.
Can I ask a question, Mr. Anderson? When I was, first I'll give you a bit of a background to the question. When I was living in Prince George, when they, I don't know what kind of machine it was, a big long blade in the front, there was also a blade in the middle. Somehow or other it scooped up the sidewalk, or not, the driveway, went by, scooped it up, and I don't know what they did with it, but the driveways were done with one machine and one scoop.
Yeah, so there is a grader attachment, which you can purchase, that as you pass down the driveway, it's hydraulically engaged and it drops. Our grader is too old. It doesn't have the capabilities for the hydraulics. We looked into this 2 years in a row. We would have to customize our grader, and it's not that old of a grader. I believe it's 1990 or 1993, but we're a little outdated on that end. It's a wonderful grader, it's beautifully maintained, and it's operationally sound, but we didn't meet the cut.
And the
Sounds like a
approximate
new
cost of a grader?
The cost of a new grader?
$500,000?
Yeah, I'll get back to you on that one. Yeah.
Okay.
But they are pricey.
But it eliminates the need for a secondary staff member to go in behind. Maybe.
Yeah, it would potentially slow down greater times, but you're not incorrect with that.
Okay.
The mechanic, our in-house mechanic is still working to achieve that attachment. He's been really trying to create ideas to do some in-house fabrication, but he's not confident on it yet.
Okay.
Okay. Option number 5. So this may be something of the piece of equipment that you may have saw in Prince George. This is a sidewalk machine called the Trackless. So this would enhance our sidewalk maintenance. Currently we utilize what is called a tool cat. It is it's made by Bobcat. It's just a different kind of option. We have plows and brooms and items for this piece of equipment. It is our primary piece of equipment. This would be an addition to our tool cat. So once again, we would be promoting one seasonal employee to full-time. We would have an increase of material costs. And the reason why I put an increase of material costs, we currently do not sand our sidewalks. So on, the example would be Vote Street. We now have an addition of a sidewalk on the riverside or the east side. However, we can broom all the snow off, we can plow all the snow off. If there is hard, icy compact, say, the scenario is that the temperatures have dropped to -17, and we need to restore traction on these sidewalks, we do not sand them. We don't have the capability of sanding them. With these types of equipment, you can pull a trailer, you can then sand your sidewalks while you're plowing in the front. So the additional cost of this multi-use machine, the great thing with these machines is you can attach mowers to them in the summertime and other attachments. So it can be deployed to the roads department, to the parks department, and assist with boulevard mowing or parks mowing. This new machine would be in addition to our sidewalk plowing program. It would increase productivity as we could deploy 2 units. So we could send one north and one south and do the cold water trail, as well as do Vote Street, say, with the tool cat as well. So our productivity would increase and increase the service level as well. This unit could assist with senior sidewalks with a change in policy, as well as some customer service requests we could deploy faster.
We have a question from Councillor Christopherson.
Yes, thank you. With a unit like that, which sounds really intriguing, the snow still has to go someplace.
Yes.
And clearing the sidewalks, if it's dumped either into the gutter or on the other side, still causes a problem for people, especially seniors, but for everybody, of either getting out of your vehicle to get onto the sidewalk, which can have a nice cleared job, but unless we start removing the snow, we're not creating the problem's given to us, but it's not satisfying all the needs if you can't get to the sidewalk because the snow is piled in front of it. And
Are you thinking of downtown primarily when you're saying that?
I think so.
yeah, basically downtown, it has to be removed.
Yeah.
But
and-
I'm
and
thinking
we,
like,
we hear what you're saying with that, and I think that's something that we've heard a lot on staff. I think that one thing to consider with this is think the long open stretches, Boat Street, Parks and
That's
Rotary.
where I was coming.
When we got stretches where you don't need to remove that snow, you need a unit that can get up and down, and we've heard it a lot because of COVID in particular. People, it's important that they can get out even when you're in winter conditions. They're looking for an opportunity to get outside the house and be mobile, and when there's been the traction concerns, it's these types of units that will allow you to do that. But you are right that particular where people are getting out of their cars, we need to have better options in place, and that is one of the ones that's going to come up for kind of downtown parking area, snow clearing and removal.
if I may, it's not just in the downtown area, because there are vast stretches in our town that our bylaws say you're supposed to get out and clear your sidewalks yourself, but in a lot of places, the land is either purchased but not developed. I'm thinking of Springbank, where there's sidewalks for a portion of it, and then there's nothing.
And
And there's
there's,
not an owner there that can shovel it off or anything like that, so the problem starts to compound itself. So I think a unit like that is good, but I also think that we need to have some way of removing the snow, not just piling it in another place.
and to add to Councillor Christopherson's example, Granite Avenue, where a lot of them do not park off the street. They only have the back alley to access. So when they park in front of their house, sometimes there's no way for them, they have to climb over the bank in order to get to the sidewalk to get to their house.
Yeah.
So depending on how big the bank is, it's quite cumbersome for some seniors.
One of the key things, and I think that we can absolutely and will consider anything that council asks for on this front, so I want to be really clear with that. But removal is one of the more expensive parts of snow clearing, and so the bigger you get with the area, if the idea is that we kind of remove the snow from all sidewalk areas, your dollars, they just disappear a little bit more quickly. So council, in making these things, recognizing that if there is service levels that you're wanting to see, perhaps it's is there particular locations that are needed, whether that's the downtown core or elsewhere. Is there a trigger point that maybe this is something we need to see, but only at a certain threshold for lower snowfalls? Maybe we'll find a way to make do. And so the policy that council establishes there is going to be really important in ultimately setting what the budget needs to be.
And maybe we can put that piece to ICS as well for their Better Homes program for the ones with seniors who are looking at that kind of need.
A lot of what I've heard is part of this, and I'll look to Greg, is going to be around potentially modifying our enforcement program to be able to say what do you do with snow removal for absentee land owners and things like that. So there's lots of moving parts in this that in order to make things work better for our residents, we're going to need to have a combination of factors.
But putting a bylaw officer to a senior who hasn't removed the snow is
Yeah, definitely
it just doesn't
not
work.
looking to do it for seniors. I want to make that really clear to anybody
good.
listening.
Or those with disabilities. Same category when it comes to snow removal.
And it is mentioned, that there could be a change in policy regarding this machine, which could assist with items that council mentioned.
And just to remind everyone that approximately $85,000, 87 is 1% in taxation dollars. So that's what we're talking about. For every 87,000, we're looking at an increase of 1% taxes. That's just snow clearing. Councillor Christopherson.
Just wanted to make one more point, is that the public also has a responsibility here. Way too often, I notice that people are clearing their driveways, and they throw it right out on the street. And then when the plow comes along, it puts the snow on their neighbor's property. And in many areas of town, they're taking the snow from their driveway, putting it out onto the street, and then the street is almost impossible. I don't know how our plows manage to get around, because sometimes the streets end up being one-way streets. And I think while we're discussing this and saying how costly it is for the city, which impacts taxes, but I think we also have to remind people that the citizens of the town also have a responsibility not to make the problem worse. Thank you. End of speech.
Councillor Locke.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of questions. This is great looking at all the equipment and everything, but can we maybe go back a little simpler on some of these things, and what are we going to do to help these processes as well? Like for example, do we have an obligation as a city to provide on-street parking? So, I mean, during the wintertime, we should all have snow routes where you're not allowed to park. We should, maybe some of these streets are a little more difficult. Nobody should be parking in the winter when we have a major snowstorm happening, because one, it doesn't help us clear the roads a lot easier, does it? And so some of these things is kind of piggybacking off what Councillor Christopherson says. We've got to find better ways to make some of this work as well, right? So I think we need, I know it's nice looking at all the fancy equipment, and we all want new cars in our garages and everything, but I think we got to really drill down and look at some more simple ways of doing this. We talk about quads to clear sidewalks and things like that, but I think every second person in this community has a quad. Is there a way, not only snow angels, but snow quads maybe? There's got to be other ways of working this, because this was a freak snowstorm, and it freaked everybody out. This isn't normal what happened here, 22 inches of snow in 24 hours or something. So we've got to find other ways of working in this community to solve this problem. It can't always be more money, because like as the mayor said, this is just one item on our budget that we're going to be struggling with this year. And every time the numbers are astronomical what we're looking at here, so we've got to find some other ways that we can come up with some of these things.
Councillor Locke, can I remind you this is the questions for staff time. Debate we'll do later.
Well, this is debate, I'm asking questions.
So staff recommendations for this is at council's discretion, though not required. The addition of this equipment and operator will allow for better, more regular sidewalk and active transportation path maintenance, with the added benefit of being fully utilized during the summer months.
We have another question. Councillor Dangu.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. To follow up on Councillor Luck's idea, has staff, since we're asking questions, has staff considered the option of working with individuals in neighborhoods who have equipment to remove snow?
The answer is yes. It was actually a call that Mayor Brown was also on, in particular with the RCMP, because as I don't know if council's aware, but Adam would certainly know, there are special requirements for how you license ATVs, and so it can happen, but our understanding is this is not the type of situation in which the RCMP is going to allow a permit to have people drive kind of all over in order to be able to operate their ATVs on roads. So there is a much bigger jurisdictional question there outside the city of Merritt. Is it a theoretical possibility? Yes. Is it something that we have immediate control to implement? The answer is no. So it would be, that honestly is probably closer to a council lobbying effort, if that's something that you feel would make a difference. And quite honestly, I think you hit on something that it could. But it really isn't an option for us to say, hey, everybody get on the streets with your ATVs, contrary to what the existing law and systems are that are in place. We understand that for municipal staff, it would be possible to get those, which is why we included them as potential equipment. But I'm glad Adam's right there. I'm like, I'm not saying anything wrong, I don't think. And so it's a legislative hurdle that we don't have an immediate answer to, Councillor Bangu.
And before I get to Councillor White, I lived in Kenora, Ontario also, and they have licensed ATVs and snow equipment on their streets in the winter. And it seems to work okay. Councillor White.
Are the companies, the maintenance companies that are out there, like, are they allowed to have the ATVs? Because when I hired the companies to clean my parking lot at the hotel, they used an ATV and a plow to plow the sidewalk.
You would be on private property, though.
Yeah, I think if it's on the streets, if you're taking the ATV to the place, burning around a parking lot, and then loading it up again, not driving it on the street, I think you might be able to get there, but it's not our area of expertise on these specific laws.
I'm just saying they did it. That's
Yeah.
how they cleaned my sidewalks. So.
Yeah, I won't ask any questions.
Thank
I'm
you.
incredibly grateful for everybody who does it, so there's no complaints coming from my front.
Okay. Mr. Henderson, you're up again.
Option number 6 would be clearing of the downtown parking areas. Clearing would need to be done at night to minimize the number of parked cars in the downtown area. As such, the cost below represent labor at double time and utilizing in-house equipment, all found, which means that includes an operator and a piece of equipment, plus subcontractor trucking. The trigger point for this program could be 2 to 10 centimeter snowfall, with the expectation of this to be completed within 4 hours. So what I mean by that is that if the crew would start at 4 a.m., we would deploy at 4 a.m., the expectation would be that the downtown parking areas would be completed by 8 a.m. Supervisor value of just south of $69 per hour. Equipment operators all found, which includes equipment and operator. $91.56 per hour. Driver of all trucks, 2 of them, but each is $90.44. Subcontractors, 2 trucks would be required. Each truck would cost $91.63 per hour. And materials. The materials added for this as you pull all the snow away from the curb line, you load it out, there's always some sort of fine residue, so I've included salt, brine, and sand to be applied after the job is completed. Total in-house costs are $2,318 per shift. The operational budget increase based on 10 times per year, so if we deployed this 10 times throughout the season, would be $23,180. Staff recommendations is at council's discretion. The implementation of this program would improve safety, vehicle access to parking, and pedestrian and scooter concerns.
Any questions? Councillor Luck.
Question, why do we have double time for our staff on this? Do we not have shift scheduling or anything like that? Can we not bring the seasonal in at straight time on these things? I don't understand.
It's based on our collective agreement and what is a normal work day, which we have to follow, which is the 7 a.m. to 3:15, and anything over and above that goes to overtime.
So do we not have scheduling though, and shift scheduling? We can't change people's shifts or bring our seasonal people in to work on these shifts? I don't understand that.
We can switch at a cost.
Okay.
I should also say that oftentimes if there is a snow event, there are going to be other priorities that they're also going to be working on. So I think that it would be important to recognize that even if we had flexibility with scheduling, the odds are you're still going to be doing it at overtime, because those people are going to be needed to clear the snow whenever it actually comes, and then in the evening you're going to need to. So unless we're talking about adding extra bodies, which is another one that will come up, even with some scheduling flexibility, which I would disagree, is something that would always help.
And through your worship to Councillor Luck, I think we'll address your question on option 8. Option 7. Clearing of the back alleys. Improvement options, all snow would have to be loaded out from the alleys, and this program would remain lower on the priority list or possibly be completed by a night shift. The trigger point for this program would be a snowfall of 10 centimeters or greater and could be completed up to 5 times per year. The cost of this increase in service would be 2 operators and equipment, so those are all found numbers. For the equipment operators and equipment, you're looking at $972.48 per shift. The 2 driver of all trucks per shift, you're looking at $963.52. How the math works out for this is each alley would take approximately an hour and a half to clear. I used round on this because some of the distances of alleys are longer and shorter, so I took an average. There are 24 alleys to clear. We're looking at 4.5 days to clear and load out the snow from the alleys. Total cost for this is $8,712. If we completed this 5 times per year, we're looking at an additional budget increase of $43,560. I do want to touch base briefly on the current procedure. We do not plow the back alleys. We simply sand. We only apply materials to the back alleys. Because of the alleys are so tight together, if we drop our blades and plow to one side, we bury all of the entrances and cars. So I just wanted to give a little background to this. The reason why we would have to clear the snow is as Councillor Christofferson has mentioned, there is no place for the snow to go, therefore we would need to load it out. The other consideration to make is we currently only have one snow dump location, which is at the Clay Banks overflow. I'm sure you've driven past it. We utilize this constantly. We're still loading out from the December 21st snowfall from parking areas. So we use it all season long. We don't have a secondary or a backup. So we do have to think about the volume that we would put there or develop a secondary snow storage.
And if I can just add to that, I've had a couple of seniors come to talk to me about back alleys. The problem is they don't have access to road access on the main highway. I'm talking in behind Granite. They can't park off Granite. They can't park off Vote. So the only access in and out of their house is the back alley. So we've got these elderly women who say they can plow their sidewalks, 80 years old. She can plow her backyard, but she plows it into the alley. She still can't get anywhere because the snow is even higher than she is. And we had...
That snowfall's growing every week.
And we had a couple of them say that it was just a real problem for them because they had no access to get in or out of their driveway. And even if they could plow their own driveway, they still couldn't get through the alley.
Yeah, and I agree with that comment. The priority list of where the alleys falls is quite low. We work the priorities, we work the side roads, we work the sidewalks, the letdowns, then the alleys. So she's right. It is a problem. It's a challenge.
It is.
Staff recommendations for this one, once again at staff discretion. If combined with other options where additional personnel are added, costs could be reduced. Option number 8 is the addition of an in-house night shift. Operational costs are based for the seasonal staff on non-overtime values. So for 2 additional seasonal staff would be $80,048. A foreman or supervision position would be approximately $100,000. And we would need to increase the materials by $10,000 as we would be running up to 24 hours a day and applying sand and brine to areas. Items to consider is discussion with QP regarding shift flexibility. increase in city equipment charges, a higher use of equipment, and earlier asset replacement costs. We would be using this equipment more, we would be adding to the wear and tear, therefore we would need to set aside funds to replace this equipment. Potential service level improvements, in addition to around-the-clock plowing, many of the items on the previous slides could be accomplished through the addition of a night shift. When we talk about road plowing, sidewalk clearing, snow loadout, the potential is there. We could increase certain service with council's direction, and additional equipment may be required. Staff recommendations is for council's discretion. I do believe this would be a very valued addition to the city. It may not be this year, may not be 2 years, but 3 years, but to put this on the table for council to recognize, I think we will be at that tipping point in a few years, but it's up to council to review.
Yeah, and Charlie talked about the tipping point operationally. I will say that our snow levels are kind of more challenging than a lot of other communities. Where you get way more than we do, you must ramp up. There's not really any questions to it. You have to design the service. And there's here, recognizing that our current service levels, even in typical years at times, can cause complaint because we don't have some of the extras in terms of the snow removal and things like that. But we're in a position where the sun, given a week or two, tends to do the job of snow removal for us in the typical year. The problem is that doesn't mean that there aren't going to be some hard days. And council has, I'll be honest, this is a tough decision given the snow values that we have. And it is like that in many of the communities that are surrounding us. You talk to Kelowna, you talk to Kamloops, you talk to Peachland and Summerland and Penticton, and they struggle with much of the same things because you have to run a program, but there's times where you feel awfully dumb having all of this snow removal equipment that's just not moving. And this year, hey, we got snow in that snowfall like we were a northern community. So you also need to be able to deal with that and ramp up and handle and provide a modest level of service in those. So with this, we're probably right around that where you might be able to justify this. You might be able to get away without it. But either way, you're probably going to be underserving or potentially overserving, and the council is going to need to decide which risk of those is.
Can you talk to us a little bit about what would happen if we took it all out of house, all the additional, and if that's possible? And I'm only looking for a comparison, and then I'm going to talk about some kind of a combined.
So when you say like all of the extras, like doing wind roads?
Well, I'm thinking you add 2 FTEs to the budget. You're looking at 6 months, approximately 20 days, working days per month. You're looking at 120 days that you're hiring that additional staff member, but you're only talking about 5 or 10 snow days. So there's a lot of other things that can be done in public works. I get that part. I'm not saying that it's not possible, but it's not because of snow removal that we need 2 additional staff.
The next option up is kind of the subbing in a large storm event. So I think after we have that conversation, it might make a bit more sense, but then we can circle back if it doesn't.
Option number 9 is increase the service during large snowstorms. For an exceptional snowfall over 20 centimeters, subcontractors could be utilized to achieve a 24-hour shift. The subcontractors would generally be deployed on a night shift, opposite to the Public Works day shift. The equipment outlined below would meet the demand of a snowfall similar to what we experienced on December 21st, 2020, which was what we recorded at the wastewater treatment plant on our weather station was 44 centimeters in 14 hours. Subcontractor grader comes in at $201 per hour. A tandem plow truck at $124.58 per hour. We would utilize 3 of those trucks. A skid steer for the sidewalks at $94.55. Total cost per shift is $8,033.52. Deploying subcontractors on a 5-night period would equal $40,167. This figure could potentially cover a season's worth of emergency snowfalls. This deployment strategy may only be necessary on heavy snowfall years and may not be needed on an average snowfall year. Where we fell short on December 21st, that snowfall went over our capacity. The crew did a bang-up job. They worked, night and day, but we could not complete 24-hour coverage, and that is where we fell short. That was a very exceptional snowfall, as outlined in Mr. Smith's letter. We did receive something close, I believe, in 2018 of December 30th of 2017, we received approximately 30 centimeters, and we were in the same scenario back in 2017. Staff recommendations: if council doesn't have the interest in the in-house night shift model, staff recommends that council adequately fund the newly created financial stabilization reserve to support increased service during exceptional snowstorms.
And I want your staff to know from all of us that we want you to pass on our thank yous to your staff. We are not saying that your staff did not do anything wrong. We recognize that they worked their hearts out, and they didn't make it, but it wasn't through fault of their own. And you need to pass that on from us. I know they took quite a thrashing from the public, and for that we are really sorry for them, because they shouldn't have had to have done that or gone through that.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
So I need you to let the rest of us know what we just, the stabilization reserve. Can we have you explain that to us? I know we just passed the approved reserves budget, but if we can just have an overview at this point. Mr. Anderson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. The financial stabilization reserve that we've established through the reserve and surplus policy would be available for these types of events. So when we go through the budgeting process and put forward the financial plan, we would allocate funds into that financial stabilization reserve that would cover an event such as this. If we had $50,000 that we needed to use for contractors for this, we would have money available in that reserve. Some municipalities do have separate reserves for snow removal or snow reserves, if you like. Those tend to be the larger municipalities with $1 million, $2 million budgets, and if they have a $500,000 overage, it's fairly significant, so they will look at that. I would suspect, if we have $50,000, $75,000 in that reserve on an annual basis to cover this, and that financial stabilization reserve can be used for other incidents where we have unforeseen costs as well, outside of snow removal.
Okay. Thank you. So this is now council's time and discuss some of these options. Councillor Fair.
Thank you. I have a question about option 9. Is there an assurance that subcontractors would be available during peak events?
That would be a challenge. It would. You would probably have to have some sort of contract in place prior to the season to deploy that subcontractor at that event and that trigger point.
One of the things that we do want to say, and also thank the public and anybody who's listening, one of the good things to come out of the struggle that I think a lot of us faced in responding to this storm is that with the kind of publicity that a lot of this received, and the letter afterwards, we've heard some really positive things from the public, and that includes, we've been approached by contractors saying, hey, I've got some equipment right now that's potentially usable. And so that's this year. Is it always going to be the case? We would need to, I think, work and really strengthen potential relationships if that's a model that council wanted us to pursue. And trying to ensure that trying to guarantee that it's going to be there, likely is going to have some form of cost associated with it in and of itself. And so the question, I think the ideal situation is that you have a lot of irons in the fire, and so that with good relationships, so that you don't necessarily have to pay for guarantees, but it's a complicated and
There are a couple items I'd like to add. The total cost per shift is currently not in our snow removal budget for subcontractors. Historically, when we bring on subcontractors, that is simply to utilize the truck box to load the snow out, not to plow the roads. We've never used that deployment strategy since I've been here, maybe long before. But for subcontractors that to be hired on to plow say truck route B or truck route A, historically that hasn't been done, and that valuation is not in the budget and was not in the budget for the December 21st snowfall.
And from what I understand is subcontractors too are hard to get a hold of because, well, who is it? YRB also contracts when they have big dumps like that, and they need all those trucks out on the highway as well. So you're in competition. Who can pay the highest at that point?
one advantage, we've got weather forecasting. It's not perfect. The storm ended up being bigger than the forecast was, but when you see those large valuations where it looks like there could be a weather warning on the horizon, if these dollars are there, you can start asking pretty seriously, what do you have available? What do you have available? And you could work to set things up. So I really do want to say that there's some legwork that would need to happen, but it's not like this isn't theoretically achievable.
One of the things we have heard loudly and clearly is we need to plug the dollars in because the money isn't there currently. I think it's Councillor Etchart.
Well, thank you for the presentation because it was definitely nice to see the figures in front of us. Of course, with all the removal that I saw happen downtown, I was happy to see that at least the parking areas in the downtown was cleared quite quickly on the 23rd because I could see it out my window at work. Years past, there used to be where they would plow the snow to the middle of the road, and was that plowed by secondary contractors in the 80s? I don't know exactly, but I think having the option 9 where we have a plan utilizing the contractors and, have a program would be probably one of our best options because if we arrange with the contractors ahead of time, they can be booked. Maybe they're anticipating the snowfall and getting ready, in the middle of the night or whatever the case may be. I know that being in a public parking lot at work, we see that we've come in the morning and they've already been there at whatever time, 5 a.m. So I think it seems the best option because with all the cost, the capital cost and avoiding tax increases, especially with reduced revenues, it's maybe one of our best options. But for the events that we could have, I don't remember seeing such a snowfall other than the winter of 96, 97, where we had about 4 feet in a short period, where we had people's roofs collapsing due to heavy snowfall. It was drastic. So we have seen snow like this, but not for over 20 years. So thank you for the info.
Thank you, Councillor Etchart. Just a couple comments. Council has shown quite a bit of support in the past 3 years with the snow removal budget and figures. We've seen it rise from 72,000 to 106. So I really do thank your guys' buy-in to this program. I know it's not perfect during these large snowfalls, but the public needs to understand that there is support from council, and the proof is in the pudding with the budget. Could we do massive amount of effort with massive amount of people? Of course we could, but there would be massive tax increase to that. There is multiple items that we've outlined, and if council has different kind of scenarios and would like to see a couple different of options, I'd be definitely open to that as well.
Councillor White, I think, yep.
You can correct me if I'm wrong on this. What I've seen over the years, and with my own experience with a huge parking lot to clear, and even the parking lot that I'm responsible for this year, the biggest thing that I've seen in Merritt is that we get a snowfall. It's a normal snowfall. It's not freezing cold and the snow's soft. And if we don't get it off right then and there, tomorrow it freezes, and then that's when all chaos breaks loose. And that's really what causes the problem, is that not getting that snow out of there right away while it's soft, and then it freezes, and then try and get it away from the curbs of the sidewalks downtown, try and clear a parking lot because it's already packed in then by then, even with nobody on it, it's froze solid. And to me, that's what causes the majority of the problems. So to have contractors available to try and clear as much of that away as possible, I think could, in my mind, solve a lot of problems. But
No, Councillor White, you're absolutely right. Our deployment strategy during the first 24 hours is throw as much iron, as much equipment, and as much overtime as possible. The crew does need to rest. That has to be identified. We must allow these crew members 8 hours of rest and then come back. That would be the additional of a subcontractor to come in to reduce their shifts to 12 hours because there's been multiple times where they're working 16 hours. The crew always accepts the overtime and is committed to their job, but there are times where we just don't work around the clock. And I believe that's identified in these, but you're exactly right. The faster you hit it with the most amount of equipment and iron is your best chance of success with the help of some chemicals.
thank you.
Councillor Christopherson.
Salt brine, salt.
There are no chemicals used by this.
The chemicals are applied to the road.
Yes.
Okay.
Just wanted to clarify a question. Is Highways still responsible for Nicola Avenue and for part of Vote Street? And the reason I ask is I haven't heard as many complaints this year about Nicola Avenue, but in previous years under a different contractor, the complaints were unreal with fast plows going down and shop owners on Nicola Avenue having their windows broken regularly by the plow trucks. So is Nicola Avenue still being maintained by Highways? And if so, I think they're doing a better job. But just to clarify to the people of Merritt that it's not the city.
Yes, and Councillor Christopherson, you are correct. Nicola is maintained by YRB. The section of Boat Street, which Councillor Christopherson referenced to, would be the overpass of the highway, and then 30 meters from the abutment on each side of that. However, we are scratch each other's backs. The city does not raise their plows when they go over the overpass. When they pass through Nicola, continuing on Vote, YRB has assisted us with their greater work on Midday Valley. So there is a bit of a partnership between the city and YRB, and we appreciate their efforts as well.
I'm glad to hear that kind of partnership is existing. It did exist years ago, and then stopped for a while.
Yeah, all of our materials, our chemical materials, our salt, our winter sand, all comes from YRB, as well as they also are their beet juice as well. When we start getting into those colder temperatures, we start applying that beet juice. So we definitely have a very good working relationship with them.
Okay. I'm really pleased to hear it, and I think we should let YRB know that.
We could do that. We also still have a problem, though, with Nicola. Nicola gets plowed. They don't do the pulling up of the snow either, and we hear constantly from businesses along that road that they have to You know, they sweep it off, it comes back there, it's a constant problem. And perhaps we as the city can do something to help out that stretch, even if it's just negotiate with Nicola, but if not, then, or Nicola, with the province. But we also have a problem with sidewalks in town, and we don't have pavement from curb to curb, and we don't have sidewalks. It becomes quite an issue when you're trying to walk along a street with no sidewalks and no curb to curb. And I know that's not snow clearing problem, but that's certainly the way we've developed the streets over the years. And I'd really like to see us move into that area where we've got all sidewalks on each side and paved curb to curb. That's in our new zoning requirements, but doesn't help what we currently got. That's your problem, Charlie. But unfortunately, it becomes ours. But
Could be a taxation problem.
yeah. But yeah, we do have long-standing issues on sidewalks and vote. Councillor Luck.
Thank you, Mayor.
Hold on, I don't know, it's,
Off on it. Yeah, there you go. Thank you, Mayor. I just want to reiterate a little bit what the mayor was saying about, I've heard from a number of people and business owners on Highway number 8, Nicola coming in. And of course, the thing is they'll clear the road, but it gets piled up. Are they responsible for cleaning the sidewalk along there as well, or they just do the road, YRB? Because I think that's the biggest issue there is
just
the business owners, their customers can't get in because they plowed the snow onto the road. So is there something we can do, follow up with them, Charlie?
They would fall under the bylaw for the sidewalks for the city.
YRB would, or the?
No, the owners would.
The owners would?
Yep.
Okay, so the owners.
YRB is strictly to the roadway.
Do their roadways. So they don't take it away either, though. They just plow it to the side, right? So that is a challenge for those business owners down there. And then, because like I said, I've heard from a couple of them down there this year. And yeah. So how do we deal with that then?
I'm not aware of a highways contractor that hauls snow away.
So none of them do? Okay. So then.
I think it's probably mostly an advocacy. Again, we've had 2 items now that I think if they're going to happen with either ATV use and wanting to ramp that up.
That's
then
for sure.
If you've got comments that you want to make, what I will say is across the board, honey beats vinegar.
Yeah.
And so I think that letting them know that there are concerns, is there any ways that we can help, is probably the approach, because I think historically maybe the city hasn't always had the greatest relationship, in particularly with that ministry.
Yeah.
We've heard very positive things from the Ministry of Transportation about this council and the work that they're doing, and they've thanked council a number of times. So I think that we can absolutely pass this along to the staff, but if you wanted to advocate, it would likely be at the...
it's currently not in their contract with the ministry.
Right. So would it be us to do the advocating? As I told a couple of them, I said, please write letters to the ministry and to YRB and let them know. Of course, they're frustrated because, we've done that, it's not working. So just continue advocating on their behalf, or council will, or the citizens,
both.
They have to do that, or both?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, anytime you want to advocate for something, if you're going to be successful on it, what wins is where there's volume, both in terms of
Okay.
numbers and frequency. So
Okay.
I think that.
Okay. Good. Thank you.
Councillor Fair.
One more point on Nicola that I think should be recognized is the bridge that goes over Nicola down by Double D and El Dorado. The lanes or sidewalks, I guess you can call them, on both sides of that bridge. I don't know, do they try to clear those, and is that just something they weren't able to get to this time?
Yeah, their labor force shovels those. I've seen them on multiple locations out there.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments? So, where do we go from here? We have a whole bunch of options, and I'm hoping that staff say they've heard what we've had to say, and that you will go back and put some kind of a plan together that,
I I'm just going to, before Greg, we can absolutely do that. What would be helpful, I can tell you what we'll do if council doesn't provide specific direction otherwise. We will, and we would like you to direct us to amend your snow clearing policy, including whatever some of the conversation is here, but it's time for an update on that. We will continue with the driveway and sidewalk clearing program for seniors and disabled. We won't do pushing snow to the middle of the road unless council tells us otherwise. It's probably not something that, I would say the same for windrow clearing. Sidewalk maintenance is going to be, again, unless council tells us, we're not necessarily going to design things that way. Clearing of downtown parking areas, I think we probably should be adding in something both to policy, because any of the ones that don't require extra equipment necessarily is probably the lowest hanging fruit. So parking areas, clearing those downtown parking areas is probably one of the ones that's on there.
Back alley clearing. For not every back alley, but for the back alleys that do not have parking off the streets on the front.
Yeah, and again, if it happens, it will be around what thresholds do you do that at? Like, it would probably have to be, we're talking a 35 centimeters, so maybe we're not doing back alley clearing most of the time, but if they're getting, a foot plus of snow, maybe it becomes necessary. So back alley clearing is something council would like to see. Is that what we're hearing?
Yeah, for certain places. Yes, I've also heard that the night shift is probably a good idea. But you gave two options on a night shift, and I kind of got lost on that.
Well, the night shift, you've got the bringing it in-house, which would be definite service level enhancements, and versus, I think, the contractor one is largely going to be focused on road conditions. And being able to get those road conditions to where they need to be in the more extreme situations. So think of in-house as being improving service levels in every year, but the option 9 contractors would be more the exceptional scenarios.
Okay. Councillor Luck.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So the couple things that we talked about, or I brought up earlier, was like a lot of cities have, is snow routes, right? The priority routes, those kind of things. Will we be seeing something on that as well? No parking in the downtown area between certain hours, especially when there's a snowfall like this, because that's going to help you a lot. So we need to start, like you go to some towns and they've got the signs up already, right? You just can't park near a certain time, so that'll be part of it. Will that be part of the discussion as well?
So currently we make public announcements, social media, radio, the day prior to the downtown snow removal, stating no parking downtown. So we don't implement signs. What we do implement is barricades to close the roads so that we can do our job. Yeah. And what we have changed on the deployment strategy, historically prior to 2017, the snow removal downtown was completed at the end of day of shift. However, they were battling traffic and battling cars. Yeah. Right now, that deployment has changed to a 3 a.m., a 4 a.m., and we actually stretched it out on the 23rd to 10 a.m., which wasn't the most successful regarding the public and interaction with my crew. It was quite negative.
Okay.
And the last one would be the ATV use on roads and things like that. I know about a year ago we had talked, I brought that suggestion forward. People thought I was crazy, but it's happening in communities around the province. They've got some test cities that are doing it. In the United States, they do it a lot in small towns like ours and everything, so we really need to work on that, because guess what? They're doing it anyway. And so the best thing to do is get it legal as best we can so that we can be able to incorporate those in a community like ours. It's a tourist community, and people have these things to be able to, so they're not, because I heard that lots of times. I got my ATV, I'm ready to clear, but I'm afraid of getting stopped by the RCMP. That shouldn't be happening in a community like this, so that would, I think, would be very, very important. Yeah. Thank you.
Councillor Bengu.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the presentation. Thank you for the information. What I'd like the city to do is to work with the equipment and staff that we have, and to also work with contractors to improve our snow removal in merit. Thank you.
Councillor Fair.
Thank you. So, hearing lots of good things, I think, about improving the sidewalk clearing and that sort of thing, because I want to hear that, because I think our most vulnerable citizens are the ones that feel that the most. And so, as far as our policy, that's where I'd like to see the most focus, is providing equal access, accessibility for all of those people as far as we can go. So option number 8, the addition of a night shift, sounds like a plausible plan to me.
Thank you. Councillor Etchart. Oh, I still have, okay, Etchart first.
Well, I'm still in favor of number 9 with having contractors in addition to what city staff do, because I think that the removal that we had within a day, what was done on the 23rd in the morning, was great to see downtown. As far as ATV goes, since this keeps being brought up and people are really thinking that ATVs are a simple solution, ATVs are licensed by the province. And there is this, I just brought a copy of this permit, which is a Division 24 motor vehicle restriction. And what it is people are required to have permission from the RCMP for the specific areas where they can operate on public roads. And without that, people can't obtain license plates for just general maintenance and use. But contractors, municipalities, they have different regulations. So if people are out there on the streets with their ATVs, they don't really have the permission, and they probably also don't have the proper insurance. People are doing that, and people do what they have to do, or they have their snow blowers, and it's important. But I think we have to look at making sure that we look after our vulnerable population and that we do it properly. And I know that there's a lot of concerned citizens that have made contact with a lot of the council, the mayor. I know that some people are asking about the age-friendly program, and they wanted to see how that was going. And I think that as long as we can address maybe the key areas, if we do look at the back alleys of maybe just the ones closer to the downtown where that's maybe they're parking in the back. Because I know I have a back alley, but most of the residents in my neighborhood don't park in the back alley necessarily, but a lot of people do park on the street. And I think that most people are able to make do with what was done. But I think that involving the contractors is probably our lowest cost option, especially if we have a plan in advance for the major events. Thank you.
Councillor White.
One of the things that I think would help with the public is that I researched a number of communities to see what was going on with their snow removal. And I kept coming across their snow removal policies, which outlined their priorities, what would be done first, then what would be done next, and sort of, in some situations, what would be on the low end of the priority list. And I just found that reading that, it was very clear, it was very cut and dried, and everybody understood what was going on with it. A number of communities also, what Councillor Luck brought up, was no parking. In fact, some communities, you couldn't park with any snow. The minute the snow was there, you could not park on the streets. But others had time frames of not parking between certain hours during the winter season, and I'm certainly not criticizing that. I just from what I got from reading it was that I think it would give the the citizens in the community a fair direction of exactly what is happening with the snow removal. And I think it would take a lot of pressure off of the public works staff, just the community knowing what's happening and what's going to happen next, sort of thing. Anyhow, just an observation. Thank you.
If I can just mention something about the not parking on the streets, there are some people who don't have driveways off the front street, which means they park their car on the street. If they weren't allowed to park their car on the street, they wouldn't be able to go home at night. So we don't have, our streets aren't consistent with some of the newer communities that can do that kind of thing. We could do it in some areas, but we certainly couldn't do it overall. Yeah, I think so. And we can leave that to maybe
And
staff
through your
to look
worship
at.
to Councillor White, great comments. My rebuttals to these putting up street signs and not allowing people to park, the issues that will arise with that is now we are simply plowing one more lane. We'd be plowing the parking lane, and we would be depositing that snow either on the curb or on the sidewalk. With these no parking signs in municipalities, I'm pretty sure they're loading that snow out. They're removing that snow. So we can implement that, but we would also be adding to the problem regarding sidewalks and where is the snow going. It does bring up a great point that it would improve safety of some pedestrians and people trying to access their car. However, we would also be depositing the majority of that snow into their driveway as we pass by as well. So we would be increasing that size of a windrow. So there's always kind of two sides to the coin.
And I think even with the streets blocked off, I got complaints that the streets were blocked off.
Yeah.
So it doesn't,
We got them with snowballs.
no, it was a tough go. I'm going to go with Councillor White again. Councillor White?
I just wanted to say my point was mainly for the downtown section of the, I mean, I realize you can't do every single street like that. But on that subject, another thing that I noticed in driving around was RVs parked in front of homes that, like, they're just parked there. That's how they're storing them. So I don't know what kind of an issue that is, or if that's on their property, or...
Yeah.
Bylaw.
So there is a permit to be able to park in the boulevard area. You're not allowed to have RVs on city street, but that's not always crystal clear as to what's what, and that can introduce problems. And so I would say if there is a concern there, it probably needs to be addressed at the traffic bylaw level as opposed to parking. But one thing that we always really appreciate is if those are the types of things that the residents are experiencing, or that council's experiencing, if we understand the scope, is this a single RV that is causing a problem in one area, or is this something that's more widespread? And it helps us know what our response should be. Do we need to be expediting bringing this to council as a report for how a policy or a bylaw could be amended? Or do we need to just work with one landowner, have a conversation, and help them understand the impact that what they're doing has on other residents in their area? And so any of that information can always be really helpful. So.
Okay, Councillor Christopherson.
Just a really quick question. Is this going to be basically a budget issue?
It has to be.
Because maybe that's where a lot of this discussion needs to take place then, because money is, if we have unlimited
He's
money,
trying
we
to
can
tell
solve
us.
all the problems. But I think where the discussion really needs to take place is at the budget table.
Yes, and now I'm going to pass this on to Mr. Lois to tell us exactly what he's going to tell us.
Thank you, Your Worship. So one of the things you were mentioning is hoping that staff will be able to have listened to the debate, and I'm sure between the four of us we have some fairly copious notes on what it is that you've been asking for. One of the notes that I have is a proposal for 2 resolutions, which I think would make our lives very clear. If the first one, that council directs staff to bring forward modifications to the snow removal policy, taking into account the council discussion on January 12th, which would allow us to basically put together a new policy based on how we feel this conversation went.
Okay, can I stop you for a moment?
Yep.
Can we have a mover for that, please? A seconder? Okay, and any quick discussion on that? All in favor? None opposed.
And
There.
then on the 9 specific proposals that Mr. Henderson and Mr. Smith put in front of you, because a lot of them have budget implications, you have a committee of the whole meeting on January 29th for most of the afternoon to go through budget issues. I think what we'd like is an informal, show of hands on each of the 9 items, and then I've got the resolution ready that council directs staff to bring forward to the January 29th budget committee of the whole meeting, and it would just list off the 9 that you indicate that you would like to see, because many of you have spoken in favour, but also with concerns about some of them, so we'd quite like to know which ones specifically we should be spending staff time on.
Okay, so you want 2 to 9. Just a quick show of hands. On number 2, driveway and sidewalk clearing for seniors and the disabled. In favor? Opposed?
That's the program. Think Snow Angels. We'll give you a quick overview as we go through each one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the recommendation from staff was that council does direct us to work with community partners to implement this program for this year. And hopefully every
Do we
year
want another
thereafter.
vote on that?
Yeah, what
Okay.
we'll do is I think that Greg will lump them together.
Yeah, at the end you'll have
But just show of hands to see which ones we'll include in that vote.
So we're not doing a motion.
Not yet. At this point, I'm looking for shows of hands to indicate what the motion should read.
Okay,
And then at the end, we'll ask you to vote on that.
so I'll back off. You take over this section.
Do you want to see driveway and sidewalk clearing? So this is just where we were asking for show of hands. That's a general yes? Okay. This one,
Enhanced sidewalk.
you guys can see big dollar values attached to it, but this is, a lot of people were asking about the cost to push to the middle of the road. You understand that mostly we've got underbodies that are pushing the other direction. We would need front-facing piles that articulate, that move to the middle. We're looking at a fairly significant blower and loading operation to be able to do that. Very likely isn't justified for the typical snow volumes that we see in the city of Merritt.
What about contractors?
The snow blowers are hard to come by. I reached out to a couple of them that they didn't have any. So that would be an issue.
Councillor Fair, did you have another comment?
Thank you. Yeah, a question. Councillor Etcher raised the point that in the 80s, I think this was previously done, and that has been raised to me countless times. So how do we respond to that? Is it something that do we know that it was done, and how is it?
Yes,
I
it
believe
was
it was done in the downtown core with a grader which articulates. So it may have been done more frequently than what we're currently doing. I do believe back in the day, Public Works had more staff as well. But I believe what they did use back then is they articulated their grader and they did it at night, but they didn't do priority roads or side roads. It was just a downtown core.
Okay.
Yeah, main highways. More than just downtown core,
Was that okay? Yep.
but mainly downtown core.
Yeah.
Okay. Are we getting into questions now on what we're doing or for staff?
We want to know whether you want us to put any extra gray matter into seeing, because again, we've put something out. If you really want us to look at this and say, staff, give us a viable plan, we can do that. You just need to know that there's time. So if you don't think you're going to go with it, tell us now.
Yeah, that's one of my concerns, Mayor, sorry.
Hold on. Okay. Who do I have now?
He may go. I'll wait.
That's one of my concerns, Mayor, is we've seen a lot of different options here, and I'm just not feeling comfortable with voting on any of these tonight in the sense of because you're going to take this back and you're going to spend a lot of gray matter on it and come back to us, and I don't know how, I just want to flush this out a little bit more. I'm just feeling not comfortable saying, yeah, I want this one in, and not doing a proper analysis. Greg,
It's
can you
not
help?
to approve it, it's to give us what we will give you, the fleshing out.
Oh, I know that, just flushing that out, but if, Greg, sorry, you were going to make a comment that way, or?
Well, essentially that, Councillor Locke, I was essentially going to say, the only thing that we're asking at this point is, what would you like to hear more about on the 29th?
So more about, we're not being held to anything like that,
You
because
can
there's
vote
a
down
lot more
any-
work here to be done,
You
I
can vote
feel.
down any of these options later. The question at this point is purely on the 29th budget meeting, do you want to hear more about this, or do you want to rule it out and say not going to happen?
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm
just knowing that we're an hour and 45 minutes deep on
Yep.
a whole lot of options, and so.
Yep,
Yeah, I know.
that's my concern. And did you have another comment, Councillor Bangu?
Yes. Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to see this happen, but I'd like to know if our contractors are able to do this. I don't want to see the city purchase new equipment to do it. So that's the option that I'd like to see. Thank you.
Councillor
Could I
Etcher?
maybe just add one through your worship to Councillor Bangu? When we're looking, there's certain portions of this program where QP unionized members do that we couldn't simply just take away from them. We would have to adopt the strategy to plow to the middle of the road during the day, where we don't maybe have the capacity here with the trucking or the snow blower, that type of option. So I just would like some clarity of how to proceed of the subcontractor portion that you had mentioned.
Councillor Etcher?
I just wanted to add to the comment, when we had the snow going into the middle of the road, it was a long time ago.
60s,
There was-
70s, 50s?
You know, even
80s.
70s and 80s, that was what they did at the time. And that was probably also because that was what was available at the time. That was graders. We didn't have the same level of contractors in town. Mayor was a little smaller. The Coquihalla was just being built. It was a different time. Maybe it wasn't even the QP union. I don't know, obviously, but things were different, and just what they did at the time, and that was probably the availability of equipment and how they operated. But rules are different now for a lot of different things and requirements. So looking at these costs on of the equipment and the staff, it seems like there might be cheaper alternatives. I would say no to number 3 personally, but I mean, I like the idea because it used to work, but we probably have better alternatives today. That's my only thought.
Thank you. Councillor Bangu?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Thank you for bringing that concern to our attention. I guess the agreement would have to be looked at. If we don't have equipment to do the job, why can't we contract out? How does that,
There's
how does that
provisions
work?
to allow for contracting out. It's just there's a process that we haven't undergone, so we would need council to direct us to explore that with the union. And the thing I'd say is, are you considering all roads? I'm going to guess not. Surely not.
No, just
That we're not
just
looking at all
downtown,
roads.
just
Are we
downtown.
looking at priority, or are we looking at downtown?
Downtown.
Downtown.
Okay, so I think what I'm hearing is the vote, and council can put to it, is just downtown pushing, really it's downtown snow removal.
Yes.
It's not a whole, do people care if it goes to the middle and then gets removed, or goes to the
I
side
don't
and then
care.
gets removed?
It
I
makes
think people care about it getting removed.
It makes a difference when you put it in the middle, because then you don't have 2 lanes of traffic on either side, and you have to do something with the traffic flow of parking. It's not that simple.
But
So
People
would
don't
the,
want snow downtown.
Well, we'd like to see the options.
Yes.
I don't want to debate with
Yeah.
you, just please show us the options. Thank you.
I think that's
That's-
what they're
that's-
doing, is showing us the options.
so,
So that would be,
I'm including that one in the resolution.
thank you. Councillor Christopherson, did you want to add
that's
to
all I
that?
wanted to say is I want to see that up there as an option for no other reason that if it costs us $5 billion a year, I'd like the public to know that we looked at it and it's just undoable. So I'd like to leave it in there.
Yeah.
Let's carry
I think
on.
that's a consensus, sir. Okay, hands up. Keep it in. Number 4, driveway windrow clearing, yay. Anybody else? It's getting a blade or a guy with a big shovel?
I'll go for it, just to cost it out, because people can know what they're asking for, what it costs, and if they want their taxes to go way up, then fly at it. They'll tell us.
And I support Councilor Christopherson on that, then we should just, all of them. That's what you're gonna say for all of
That's
them.
what I'm thinking. Well, I don't know. What's the next?
What's number 5?
Oh, sorry.
That's comparisons.
We checked the seniors program. Linda's got that under control. There was another option instead of this kind of a machine, but it doesn't require sanding, or it doesn't have a sander behind it, and that's the Princeton way of the lawnmower attachment, right?
And it's very similar to the current equipment that we do have, the one piece of the tool cat, which can attach a broom and a plow, so that's what we utilize currently.
Okay. And I think there's some piece of that we can do. Certainly not all the homes, but the areas that we need to do better.
So this in particular would be adding an additional piece of equipment in order to improve that service, and so.
And that piece of equipment can't do anything else except that?
No, it would be able to do very, very much multi-use.
Okay, I'm sorry.
In other
I keep-
seasons, we could transfer it to parks.
Okay. I'm in.
I have a question. What equipment you want?
Can I, hold on?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Before I can decide if we require this or not, I'd like to know what equipment our contractors have. This service is required, but do we need the equipment? So, yes, please budget the price of this and also what our contractors can and can't do. Thank you.
I believe staff already do some of this, which is going to be difficult to bring in contractors when staff already do the work. We can't bring contractors in that are already, or that can take over the job that is already being done by a union member.
We're not doing a good enough job, so I don't know what to say. If this means we need to bring in contractors to help out Public Works, then we do that. But at the moment, the way it's working, we're dropping the ball. Thank you.
You're going to get an awful big budget. Okay, number 5, do we have anybody voting for it except me? Otherwise, it'll die. Looks like there's 3 only. Okay. It's not good enough. So clearing of downtown parking areas. So was one of the major complaints at the aquatic center, the Ms. Brick. Do you have a question, answer? A comment? Did I see your hand go up? Oh, sorry. Sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot. Okay, are we looking at this? Hands up? Okay. And back alley clearing. It's one I've heard an awful lot on. Only 2 of us? Holy smokes.
one of those special areas, there may be 2 back alleys that need to be done.
No, there's a bit more. It's one of my biggest complaints this year, was the back alley clearing. Yep. Addition of an in-house night shift. Looks like a no. Okay. And increase service during large storms. That's. Well, that didn't take too long. Sorry, guys.
That's a lot of information there. Wow.
Yeah, it was a big program. Mr. Lois.
Thank you, Your Worship. So now you've had all the fun of building that resolution. Can I suggest that somebody move that council direct staff to bring forward to the January 29th Budget Committee of the whole meeting options 3, 4, 6, and 9. That is to say, pushing snow to the middle of the road with follow-up snow removal, driveway windrow clearing, clearing of downtown parking areas, and increased service during large storms.
Moved and seconded? Okay. And all in favor?
Thank you.
Opposed, none, carried. Thank you, and we'll move on to our fire hall expansion resolution from Municipal Finance. Thank you, Mr. Henderson and Mr. Smith, for your patience with us. That's a lot of information. And Mr. Anderson, staff report, please.
Great. Thank you, Council. Mayor and Council, here we've got, and before you here, a recommendation for approval on borrowing through municipal finance as part of the spring borrowing session, $2,209,000 as authorized through the Fire Hall Expansion Loan Authorization Bylaw 2223-2017. And this is done through the Thompson-Nicola Regional District. They requested to consent to our borrowing over a 20-year term and include the borrowing in their security issuing bylaw. They are meeting on Thursday to go through their security issuing bylaw. So if we give them notification after the meeting today that we want to proceed with this, and I'm recommending a 20-year term, but that can be altered. The initial application that was sent in, the servicing limit application that was approved back in 2017 was for a 25-year period. The tendency for these types of bylaws is to go to the maximum term, because you can always reduce the terms downwards, but you cannot reduce the terms upwards. So at that time, the Director of Finance recommended a 25-year term on the borrowing, and the rates in place back in 2017 were a lot higher than they are today. They were 3.5% interest rates on those terms. So the cost, even at the 25-year term back in 2017, was about $135,000, which is what was recommended at that time. As the Mayor mentioned, 1% tax hike is about $87,000. So 135 was roughly close to 2%, not quite 2% of a hit on taxes. The rates have come down. I did give you a handout here with the rates for the 20-year term, and that rate is off of their website, the 2.2%. But with speaking with MFA, their rate for a 10-year term, and even though it is a 20-year agreement, it is refinanced after 10 years. and their current 10-year rate is about 1.46%. But their website does show the 2.2, just as a bit of a safety there, because you do have to refinance after 10. So it will be approximately 1.4 or 1.5% for a 20-year term. So going through that, with the borrowing in place, when we put in the application back in 2017, it did affect our liability servicing limit at the time. What the province does, it takes your annual revenues and based on a percentage of your annual revenues says this is the maximum that you can afford to have as far as debt payments. I think that for the city is just over $3 million. With this borrowing in place, we were about $900,000, or about 25% of the limit that we're allowed. So we're still well within that limit. We are about 6% of the revenue amount when it comes to the actual total cost of borrowing with this in place. And the research I've done from a few years back is that municipalities try to be about within 5 to 8% when it comes to percentage of debt to revenue. So 6%, we're roughly in that range right now. That being said, there is the option to look at a shorter term. We could look at a 15-year term, has a lower interest rate, a lower cost of borrowing, but it does have an increased annual payment, which does impact our borrowing limits and also impacts our annual budget as well too, where we're trying to build up reserves over time. So that is one of the reasons to look at the 20-year. I think 25 is a little excessive, and there is no, the cost right now for money is about, even at the 2.2 is $141,000. So it'll be less than that. It'll probably closer to the 130, 135 when we do get the approval.
Mr. Anderson, one of the policies of MFA is that you can't pay these off at any time either. The loan is the loan. There's no additional payment added to it. Does that account for the 10-year mark? At 10 years, we can look at this and decide whether or not we want to renew. We could pay at that point.
Yes, Mayor. You can at 10 years pay it off or pay a portion of it off. So after 10 years, if we want to knock it down a little bit for the remaining 10 years, we can do that.
Okay, thank you.
They go on 5-year increments, so you could even probably get it down to a 15-year at that point, but you could definitely knock it down at that time.
Thank you. Okay, so do I have the recommendation is that council approve borrowing from the Municipal Finance Authority of British Columbia as part of the 2021 spring-fall borrowing session. $2,209,000 is authorized. What?
Was that a bit of a typo? The spring
I
fall?
was thinking that was a typo.
Yeah, okay.
The spring fall borrowing.
What did I say?
It's in there. Yeah.
Oh. So the spring borrowing session. Got it. I sit on this board. I should know that. Okay. And that the Thompson-Nicola Regional District be requested to consent to our borrowing over a 20-year term, which includes the borrowing in their security issuing bylaw. Mover and seconder? And anyone want to speak to this? All in favor? Opposed? None. Carried. And we have a grant available. Mr. Henderson, can you speak to this grant for us, please? You or Mr. Smith, either one? Okay.
This grant application would be for the abutment repairs on the KBR bridge at the west end of Quilshena.
That's the little black bridge in front of the Norgard
That's correct.
site. Well, not directly in front of it, but. Anybody want to speak to this? Councillor Fair.
Just for clarification, correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought I remembered we had this added to last year's budget and then it was taken out due to COVID. Is that correct, or am I just imagining things?
The abutment was identified in the fresh hit of last year, so I don't think it would have made the budget.
I don't think it made the budget. I think we talked about it, but I don't think it made the
Yeah,
budget.
we may have had a conversation around it.
I think there was talk about being able to fix it by the fall, but when the fisheries came through and they said we couldn't do this, it wasn't an issue at that point. So I don't think it was COVID, I think it was.
The costs are nearing $100,000 for the repair, so that's why it wasn't completed
Yeah.
under the operational budget of 2020.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor, Mr. Smith.
One thing for council to be aware of, so with the COVID-19 resilience infrastructure stream, there's two different, I'm going to call it branches. Stream, ordinarily you can make individual applications to different streams and that's okay. But for COVID-19 infrastructure, the one that is for the flood mitigation purpose, and then you've got the general stream. If you apply to one, you cannot get funding under the other. And so I want to give council the advance heads up that we are going to be bringing forward a recommendation at our next meeting to also apply for the very same West Merritt Active Transportation Plan that you saw previously. The reasoning being that's a multi-million-dollar project, and so if it doesn't get funded under the other plan, which was 73% funding, and this one is 100% funding, so it would be advantageous to get that larger dollar value under this plan. So I want council to just understand that if we were to get one, it would be one or the other. I don't, but we would hate to let a good opportunity go by that could potentially leave us in a net better financial position. So we will be bringing an application despite the fact we know that may end up minimizing or making impossible our chance at actually getting funding for this if we were to get that one.
So are you talking about the Vote Street second stage, is that?
No, this one, sorry, is the West Merritt Active Transportation Path, so the one that would create the river trail and support a path all the way along. So you saw a previous application for that under the infrastructure, federal infrastructure grant program. But again, that one would cost the city, because it's still 27% funded by the city, in the neighborhood of $600,000, whereas this would be 100% funded. So we're going to play the numbers game and see how this shakes out.
Yeah. So we need a motion at this point to say that council directs staff to apply for the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, COVID-19 Resilience Infrastructure Stream Adaptation, Resilience and Disaster Mitigation Program for the KVR Pedestrian Bridge Repair, and that council directs staff to oversee project management and the management of funds that are awarded. And second, okay, and any one want to speak to this? Yeah. I think we're all thinking the same thing. So, all in favor? Opposed? None. Carried. Okay, now moving right along. The Economic and Development Committee appointees, and Ms. Brick, you are on.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Your Honor. This item before you tonight is the Economic Development Committee. It was...
Linda, can I have you move a little closer to the mic? Thank you.
There we go. How's that?
That's better.
Excellent.
Thanks.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the Economic Development Committee was brought before Council for approval of the terms of reference in May of 2020. And the terms of reference, the purpose of this committee is to advise Council on matters pertaining to economic development, downtown revitalization, investment, business attraction, and long-term economic sustainability. Council tonight is considering the appointment of 9 voting members and 2 members of Council to this committee. At the closed meeting of Council on November 10th and 24th, Council, they reviewed the submissions that were made to this committee, and tonight you are making the decision as to who's going to be on that committee. So I will turn it back over to you, Your Worship.
Thank you. And there's also an option for the mayor as an ex officio member to be part of this committee. We were looking at the potential for 12 committee members, and instead of changing the reference to add one more person, I can attend as an ex officio member. So that makes up our other committee membership. Anybody want to speak to this? Okay, are we ready to make that vote that council appoint the following persons to the Economic Development Committee? I need a mover and a seconder. Okay, and did you not move it? Oh, okay, move second, okay, thank you. And anyone want to speak to this? Councillor Bangu.
Yes. Would you like me to read out the names of the individuals that we just voted on? Or no?
Well, we could read them out. Did you not read them out? I thought we...
Oh, no, Your Worship, I didn't read them out. I just referred to the report, but I can
Okay.
certainly read them out if you'd like.
Yes, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
So the recommendation that's before you is that council appoint the following persons to the Economic Development Committee. It's Bev Curry-McLean, Margaret Honer, Mary Holgate, Isla Jackson, May Ketter, Linda Maley, Ron Sanders, Joanne Street, Carrie Ware, Councillor Kurt Christofferson, and Councillor Tony Luck.
Thank you. So, all in favor? Opposed, none, carried. Canadian Municipality Network on Crime Prevention. Mr. Lois, can you give us a quick update on this, please? Oh,
Thank you, Your Worship. This is a much smaller item than we would normally bring to Council. Back in December, our Community Crime Prevention Officer, Marlene Jones, came to me and asked if she could please join this network, which is a series of Canadian municipalities, essentially with various different sizes, which essentially come together and just share best practices and experiences on preventing crime. And she was asking for permission that if I could sign off on the budget. However, because the municipalities are members, then we need a council resolution to do this. So I think this is probably one of the few occasions we'll come to you asking to spend $650. But if you would be interested in that, then a council resolution to send the application letter would, I think, be very much appreciated by the CPO.
thank you. And I need a mover and seconder that council resolves to write a letter of application to join the Canadian Municipal Network on Crime Prevention and to pay the membership fee. Second, okay. And any comments? All in favor? Opposed, none, carried. Council Remuneration. This is one that I'm looking at because we've had a number of decreasing tax revenues in the city. Business is suffering. There's decreasing income all around us. Individuals are losing their jobs to COVID. And this is a way to show our support and to recognize those that are having difficulty. It's a moot issue. It's non-binding, which means that even if we make a motion like this, it is up to the individual councillor to go to payroll and have this done. It's not a public matter. We're just saying we're looking at doing this just as a way to show our support to the community. So what we're asking for is that our cost of living increase for 2021, which is based on the Consumer Price Index, and it's policy that we get it annually, that this year we would put the increase to remuneration awarded under Section 4.1 of the Bylaw. So we need to make a motion before we speak to it. So we need a mover that council calls upon all elected members at the City of Merritt to return the 2021 CPI increase to remuneration awarded under Section 4.1 of the Bylaw, number 2266, 2019, to the city. Okay, and Councillor Luck, did you want to speak to this?
Mayor, I fully support this. I think this year has been rather challenging the last year for our businesses and people in the community. I think moving forward, it's probably going to be more challenging because these things, they don't happen overnight. These things kind of roll forward, and there's going to be some challenges for this council as we look at our budget and everything moving forward. And I think one of the big criticism a lot of politicians across the country has been they've been taking their salaries and increases and things along the line, and it's bothered me for one. And so I fully support this motion that we suspend our cost of living increase for 2021, and fully support that in kind of a setting an example, and because a lot of us are going to have to take some hits, and this is just kind of setting an example for the community as well. So I fully support this motion.
Thank you. And Councillor Etchart?
I basically was going to say the same thing. I think that if we're expecting to reduce expenses, that we have to look at ourselves first and find ways to be cost effective and look at what we really need and what we need in town. So I definitely support this. Thank you.
Okay, nobody else? Going to ask the question. All in favor? Opposed? None? Carried. Maybe we can put this towards the snow removal program. Yeah. Okay, that probably wasn't called for. Any notices of motion? Okay, reports from council. Councillor Etchart.
Just that we had a lot of comments, positive and negative, from the community, but I think that given the extreme weather that we had all in one day, that I think that the city staff did as best as job as they could with what they had available for resources, and I'm grateful for what did happen downtown, and thank you for coming together with this plan and this presentation, because we sure like to hash things out, and that can probably be immensely frustrating, so thank you for that.
Anybody else? Oh, Councillor White.
I would like to just mention that I have had a number of comments on the letter that Mr. Smith put out. What I'm getting from that is the letter was very much appreciated, and a couple of the people that I talked to felt that the city was listening, and they appreciated the letter.
Councillor Bangu. Oh, sorry. I'm going to go to Councillor Christopherson first.
Thank you, Your Worship. Earlier on, I had mentioned that I thought it would be appropriate to give YRB credit for doing good highway work, but I'd like to add to that I would like to pursue some way that the city and YRB can work together to make life a little bit easier for those businesses and people that live along Nicola Avenue. It is still continuing to be a difficult situation for those businesses that have to plow themselves out of their driveways 3 or 4 times a day because the windrow goes into it again. And so not complaining about YRB service. I really appreciate the weather information that they send out to council and telling us what they're doing. But I think it's incumbent upon the city to also add that we need to find ways to help the people along Nicola Avenue to deal with the snow situation.
Thank you. Councillor Bangu.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. The public was extremely happy with how City Hall interacted with them, and I'd like to commend the public. elected officials, from the conversations that I've had, feel uncomfortable interacting online with citizens because occasionally they can turn extremely vicious. And we've seen that in the past. But I have not seen that lately. Interacting with the public online hasn't been uncomfortable. It has not been difficult. And I'd like to commend Meritonians for not being so vicious and being kind with us. Thank you.
Seeing no more, we're going to information items and SILGA correspondence. I'm not so sure they're asking us for anything in terms of resolution. They want us.
It's a dangerous thing to say right now.
Yeah, it certainly is. So they're looking for a couple of things. One of them is just to let us know that there's a call for nominations. If you want to sit on the SILGA executive, there will not be calls from the floor for the nomination at this point. So you have to, if you want to do that, you have to get it ahead of time. They're also looking at resolutions for the potential for taking anything to UBCM. They would prefer us to go through them first to take it to UBCM. And there's an article here, there is asking us for a resolution on that first item, is it not? Pardon me?
Attachment 3, Your Worship, is the call for resolutions letter.
Call for resolutions, but not, that's only for us to go take things to UBCM, take it to them first. We don't have anything at this point to take.
No, so at this point there's absolutely no resolution required by Council, Your Worship, and there wouldn't be for at least a couple of meetings. But if any of you were minded to put forward resolutions to SILGA, for example, if you wanted to try building a coalition around lobbying the province on changing some of the regulations that were discussed earlier this evening, then you might want to think in the next couple of weeks about crafting a resolution to give direction to staff to come up with the wording on that, so that it would be ready by the end of February for the February 26th deadline for receipt of SILGA motions.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Are we giving staff direction for that? That would be. I think there was support for that. Okay. You don't need a motion to have that addressed, do you?
I think at this point I can bring forward a staff report in either the next meeting or the one after, which would have to be voted on by Council. But at this point, I think we heard your conversation loud and clear earlier.
And a lot of times too, a lot of these motions also go to the regional district. So we could take it to the regional district and then to SILGA, but depending on how the timing works for that. Okay, so the other one is the City of Kamloops resolution, and I suspect this is an important one for us to make a resolution to do a similar program on opioid crisis. Anybody with me? We need a mover and a seconder to. Thank you. Anyone want to speak to this? I think this has been long in the making. I think we've all talked about this in the past as being a worthwhile thing to do. So I'm going to call a question. All in favor? Opposed? None? That was quick.
Is that the exact same resolution, Your Worship?
Yes.
It's big and long. That's with a lot of recitals.
Oh, do you want to work your magic on it? Is that what you're saying?
And now this brings us to closed, and I'm not sure that we have any other items here, right? We don't have any items for closed meeting tonight. Okay, then I don't have that agenda. Anyways, we need a mover and a seconder that the meeting be closed to the public under the Community Charter, Section 91C, labor relations or other employee relations. All in favor? Opposed, none, carried. And that brings us to the closed meeting. And we're going to have a